So, Dave, been here at the Beet Retreat. There have been a lot of conversations around what we can do to make the streaming marketplace realize its full potential. On the other hand, there's been conversations around how the walled gardens are almost stealing all of that potential. I point to this article that was put out by Evan Shapiro a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a week ago, that said 66% of all ad spend in the US. So two-thirds of all ad dollars spent in the United States went to four companies. Any guess in terms of which four companies those were?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty obvious. It's Google, Meta, TikTok, and Amazon.
It's interesting. I asked a friend of mine and she was like, "Oh, is it like Viacom? Is it no?" And so what is contributing to that? Like, I know that's a big part of Moloco's sort of ethos, but why are they clobbering everyone else in the market in terms of ad spend?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I think is really important to answer if we're going to see a new age of media companies come back and thrive with these new direct-to-consumer type models and new distribution channels and everything else. And so I think it's the question to ask. And the answer, the way we think about it is that whether you want to argue about attribution or fraud or whatever, most marketers have the perception that when they put $1 into those systems, they get $1.30 or $1.50 or $4 out of the equation. And however flawed that might be, that's simply the perception in the market. And for a lot of businesses, it's not a perception, it's a reality. There are millions of advertisers that buy from these services where they are seeing real customer value be created for their businesses by putting money into those platforms. And so the challenge for the broader industry, which has not historically operated on an outcome basis, is how are you going to combat the fact that it's really easy to get ROI using those four services?
What do those four services have that that a massive media company like a Paramount or an NBCU or or a Viacom? What do those companies have? Or what is it their secret sauce?
Yeah, look, I think there are a whole bunch of assets. I think obviously the one that most of the industry would point to is, well, they self-attribute success and they take credit for things that may not actually be things they're creating. That's debatable, and I think we could have that fight forever. But while we're having that fight, YouTube's going to grow another 20 billion. And so the question is, what do we do with this dynamic and how do we combat that? In the way we see it in our work with a lot of the large media companies, and in particular, brands who grew up in digital first, the elements that those guys offer is identity. So they know that you're a logged in user and they're able to understand a lot of information about those users. But interestingly, the data advantage that they leverage is not nearly as large and vast as or differentiated as some of what the other big streamers have. The example I gave today is that what drives the best prediction of what you're going to do next is what you did last. And so the last 30 minutes worth of information are incredibly powerful and incredibly predictive of what you're going to do next. The big shift that they've made is they don't set an audience that you're going to go target. They look at a user and figure out which offer to put in front of that user at that particular moment. So they've taken the whole concept of, I've gone out, I've sold an ad, I've negotiated a rate for that ad. When the user that qualifies for that ad shows up, serve them the ad. That's how we've been doing advertising forever. These systems are powered by really sophisticated machine learning that says, here's an impression for this individual user. Instead of saying, here's the campaign that has, by my static set of rules, come across to this user that fits into this cohort, why don't I create a prediction of the likelihood of the outcome that every advertiser has, and then pick the one that has the highest likelihood of generating an outcome? It's one of the reasons why you're on Instagram. There's barely such a thing as frequency capping on Instagram. You'll see the same ad 20, 30 times.
Oh my God.
And it's because they know eventually you're going to buy that t-shirt, right? Because they know that if we find you at the right moment, that ad's going to hit and you're going to go out and buy, and that transaction will happen. And then that transaction then feeds back into the ML to reinforce that transaction is, and that targeting criteria was the right criteria. So it's a living, breathing model that puts the user and the prediction of that user to take an action at the center of the decision, as opposed to preemptively filtering an audience that you think is the right audience for you to hit.
So I think though the challenge with, or rather what you're highlighting is almost a shift in the mindset of how streaming or TV needs to be bought and sold. And I think the audience doesn't make a difference. The audience doesn't make a distinction if they're watching something on if I'm on Instagram and I'm scrolling and I see the ad for something, and if it's relevant, I'm gonna buy it. I don't think I make a distinction between whether I see that on IG, whether I see that ad on TV, whether I see that ad somewhere else. If I'm in the market for it, if it's targeted and relevant to me, then sort of perhaps the environment doesn't matter. But I think that's a fundamentally different sort of way of thinking about buying, and that seems to be what Moloco is kind of trying to bring to the TV space.
Yeah, look, I think context is incredibly important. And so to say that you can show someone a TV ad and they're going to go on their phone and buy something and you're going to make that correlation, I think that's a fallacy. That may happen, but it's not going to be the bulk of use cases. And so, if you look at the ads that get served on connected TVs for YouTube, 50% of all video consumption on YouTube is now on large screens. It's not on mobile and it's not on desktop anymore. Half of all traffic in the US comes from the large screen. They're still driving outcomes. So how are they doing that? Well, the key thing is that brands or buyers will put in their particular objective. Sometimes the objective is as simple as reach. Mm-hmm. But what's not happening is I'm saying, okay, I want to hit women 18 to 49 in the Cincinnati DMA, and then you serve an ad, and then the next day you find out from Nielsen that you didn't hit that DMA. That's not what they're doing. They're looking at the information and saying, where is this person and which of these campaigns are relevant? And if the one that's most relevant, most predicted to hit that objective of reaching a woman who's 18 to 49 in Cincinnati, then that's the ad that'll get served. And so the fact is that we're moving from a world of measurement to prediction and optimization. That's a huge seismic shift. And it's not something that this industry can do overnight. You look at the upfront, it's billions of dollars that are being traded this way. To say that the entire industry should change overnight and start buying and selling the way that YouTube and everyone else does, that's not going to happen. But what is possible is looking at the entire full budget that a marketer has and saying what portions of their budget are going to those platforms, and can I peel off some of that budget to start servicing those objectives more effectively. And that's really what we're trying to do, is help media companies peel off some of those budgets that they're not even eligible to for today, right? You look at DoorDash as a sponsor for some of the large brand buys they do. That's great. Keep selling that and sell it exactly the way you have been. But the fact is, DoorDash's budget for outcome-based advertising is significantly larger than their brand budget. Same thing for most e-commerce platforms, food delivery, travel, banking, all the trading apps, all that stuff. Those guys look for outcomes, and their budgets are 80% performance-driven. So let's see if we can peel off 5% of that budget and put it in the hands of broadcasters who can change hearts and minds with large screens and drive real impact.
So maybe one question I have for you then, though, is, who's the Moloco user? Is it a digital first buyer at an agency now? Is it someone who's come up in digital and sort of now has a senior position and can say, hey guys, let's think about this differently? Or is it, who's the ideal Moloco user?
Well, so we have two different products under our streaming umbrella. One of them is a streaming ad server, which for a media company will take the ML that we've built that predicts the likelihood of an outcome, and they can bolt it onto their ad server, and they can operate campaigns within that ML prediction platform to then send bids effectively back into their waterfall. So it's just pure demand density. So if I'm at a broadcaster and I want to go and I have a relationship with DoorDash or with Uber or one of these guys who buy very heavy performance, now I have the opportunity to go in and pitch them something in addition to what they've already been doing. And by the way, this has been going on for years. Sponsorship activation has been a very standard tactic for a long time. This is just sponsorship activation with an outcome achievement attached to it. So that's one use case, and that's our streaming ad serving product. The other product is our CTV DSP, which is designed for the buy side. And so if you look at the mobile app space where we've lived historically, you have huge gaming, huge consumer app category, banking, finance, retail, e-commerce. Those guys who are now up-leveling their businesses and starting to sign on with agencies, they need help figuring that piece out. And so there's also an opportunity for agencies to start moving some of these performance dollars into the broader overall marketing plan that they've been running, where historically a lot of these dollars have been bought directly by the brands in-house.
It's interesting because there's a level of sophistication with mobile game makers, for example, that I think people that are not in that space kind of are very dismissive, but app developers are some of the most sophisticated marketers in the business in terms of understanding how to get people into their app, how to then continue to advertise to the whales, to the people who actually spend and invest in their app. Any thoughts on why you think kind of the industry has kind of disregarded the app developers and their budgets?
Well, I think there are two reasons. The first thing I would say is they are incredibly sophisticated. If you look at some of the big puzzle or the word puzzle games or these sort of casual games, some of these businesses are $300, $400, $500 million a year businesses, and they're profitable from day one with their ad budgets. Most good UA managers within these gaming companies can tell you if the game is going to be profitable within the first couple of weeks. And these guys launch games every few days, every few weeks. Voodoo, who's a very large hyper-casual game developer, they have mastered the ability to create a game quickly, start buying media against it, figure out if it's going to get enough gameplay that it will become a profitable investment, and then from there they'll scale. And so these guys have gotten really sophisticated. One of the reasons it's easy to be a little bit dismissive of these categories is that the flywheel of output and inputs is perfect. So app developers get a download, that signal gets sent to their buying platforms in real time. Then someone buys coins in a game, that transaction gets sent to their buying platforms in real time. And so the ability to predict an outcome gets stronger and stronger very, very quickly. And what I would say the big opportunity for agencies and the big opportunity for brands is to help marketers build that flywheel really effectively and efficiently.
Thank you. That's a good segue. I was going to say, are there things that as these performance-oriented marketers start to move into the streaming space, are there things that the media owners can do to actually capture those dollars? Are there things that the agencies can do to capture those dollars? Because it's clearly money, and it's clearly money that could possibly save some of these media companies from having to make layoffs and having to sort of make these drastic changes that seem to be happening because all of this other money is going to these four platforms.
Yeah, so one of the really encouraging and inspiring things I heard today from the sessions were how much investment the agencies have made in data infrastructure. That's critical. Because if they're going to help their customers, they have to get really good at taking data that has historically lived on the customer, on the brand side, and move that into an architecture where they can safely and confidently move that data through these buying systems to help inform on the input side. And because that infrastructure is there, they can start developing systems and tactics for capturing the outcome that the advertiser cares about and piping that back into those systems to create that flywheel. So for the agencies, I think there's a huge opportunity to create value for creating those flywheels and those digitally addressable data points that inform both sides of the equation. On the media company side, it's very similar. These guys, most of the big broadcasters have set up clean rooms. They have lots of logged in first-party data. That information can be a huge advantage for them in showing the ability to drive outcomes because they can tie it to a user. Now there's all kinds of identity stuff we have to get sorted out and all that kind of thing. But everything we heard today is that those are the areas that both media companies and agencies are investing in. And that's encouraging because that's getting them closer to a system and an architecture that has allowed the four big companies that capture all the dollars. That's what allowed them to win. And so I think we're making steps toward that.
So maybe my last question for you would be, if you can look into your crystal ball and you're looking at the trends on your platform, looking at the types of advertisers that are coming to you and saying, or the types of agency partners that are coming to you and saying, hey, we want to figure this out. The types of media companies that are coming to you and saying, hey, we want to dip into this spend. What's a prediction that you have for next year? Is it, are we going to see, is that 66% going to go down to maybe 60% or 50 something percent?
To be honest, I hope so. I don't know. I don't know about next year. I think this is a multi-year problem to be solved. With that said, the level of attention and investment that is going into figuring out both sides, the inputs and the outcome tracking, I think there will be individual brands that get it right and figure out ways to create major competitive advantage when they step into these bidded inventory marketplaces to secure inventory. So again, like I was saying, this is not a disruptor to the upfront. I think the upfront's going to continue to be what it's been, and it'll change and it'll evolve, but I don't think it's going anywhere. What I'm talking about is the dollars that historically wind up in the hands of DSPs and the four walled gardens, where the decision is made by a third party. The agencies and the media companies have long-standing relationships. They want to trade directly. And I think there's a big opportunity for those guys to get together and start moving that data, that inputs and outcome stuff together so that they can figure out how to drive those outcomes effectively. So I wouldn't say I would make any bets about there being a big drop in Google or Meta revenue, but I do think there will be lots of individual use cases, perhaps at the brand or at the agency and the media company level, that'll show signs that this is starting to come together and work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.